Hello, I'm Susan Elliott, the news editor of Musical America, and today we're going to be talking to Jeremy Geffen. Jeremy is the executive and artistic director of Cal Performances at UC Berkeley. He had been in his job just under a year when the pandemic hit, so he's going to tell us a little bit about making the transition from 80 live theater, music, and dance performances a season to what has come to be known simply as Cal Performances at Home. Hello, Jeremy. Thank you for doing this.
It's so good to see you, Susan.
Yes, same here. You arrived in what, April of 2019?
That's correct. That's correct.
And about a year, less than a year went by before you got hit, like the rest of us, with the pandemic.
It's a great shame that season has not been able to take place in the same way as it had been intended, but there have also been some unexpected bright spots.
Yeah, such as?
I certainly don't think that we would have invested in the digital platform that we've developed in quite the same way. I think that probably would have come, but it would have come later. And what it has allowed us is greater engagement and a different type of engagement from the concert hall. Obviously, we're all here because we love the live performance experience. That's why I got into this area. But there are some angles that you aren't able to view artists from when you're just looking at the stage. And I've heard from a number of people who have watched our programs that they are able to engage with artists in a much more intimate level, which sort of feels counterintuitive because there's a lot of technology between you and the artist, but you're much closer visually than you can be in a concert hall. And then there's also the artist personality that is reflected in the interviews that are part of the performance.
As I think I mentioned, you're our first multi-genre presenter and our first presenter that's affiliated with a university. And so I was curious as to how much you draw upon the faculty to help you in your programming, but also in introducing your programming.
This is one of the great advantages of being a presenter on the campus of one of the world's great research universities, that you have these extraordinary intellectual resources at your feet. Yes, there has been a tradition of having faculty involved in Cal Performances about Manuel Cinema's production of Frankenstein. And
yeah,
our chancellor happens to be a scholar of 19th century literature, especially Victorian literature, especially Mary Shelley, and especially Frankenstein. So this is fortuitous, and it was an opportunity for me. I felt embarrassed that I'd never read the book, and it is so prescient in that it introduces some of the ethical challenges that stand before us today and are especially appropriate to a university setting, because this is a very technologically adept campus, and we're dealing with issues, the ethical issues surrounding artificial intelligence and around genetic editing. And this book speaks almost directly to them. So.
When you were first faced with not being able to do any performances live, to what degree did you seek help and get help from the university in terms of getting up to speed technologically? Because it must have all been in their back pocket, right? Or was it?
I think at the same time as we were figuring it out, the university was figuring it out as well, because I think this has been the debate as to whether in-person instruction can ever it can ever be supplanted by remote instruction has been raging within universities for decades.
Right.
Overnight, almost every university in the country and probably in the world took their instruction from in-person delivery to remote. So you were figuring it out at the same time, and there are resources, there are people you can speak to here about the technology, but even beyond that, there are minds in the business school who can help you adapt your business model. One of our trustees is the head of Berkeley Skydeck, which is the incubator on the UC Berkeley campus. And I found that she was particularly helpful in changing our business model, in finding ways that could be reactive and that could take advantage of the moment rather than letting it overwhelm us. If you had told me, if you told almost any member of staff that we're going to have a digital platform that is rich and has an entire digital season on it, up within 2 months, I think none of us would have believed it.
You all have been doing your canceling on a sort of piecemeal basis. I mean, didn't you just earlier this month, you announced that you were not doing the rest of the season?
To a large degree, our decision-making has been guided by not just the state and local public health authorities, but also by the campus and the whole UC system policy. There is a policy at the moment of no non-affiliates on campus, which means that anyone who is not employed by or a student of the university can't be on campus, and that would mean that most of the artists that we employ and for our presentations, as well as a lot of the audience that we have, would not be able to come.
You're a multi-genre presenter, and yet just looking at what I could find on the web, it's most of what's coming what's happening this fall is music, right?
That's correct. There are a couple of exceptions to that. Well, actually 3 exceptions. Manual Cinema's Frankenstein, their Christmas Carol, and Darcy James Argue and Secret Society's performance of Real Enemies. And the reason that it is focused on music primarily is quite simple, which is that we have a huge dance following here. Zellerbach Hall is one of the great dance theaters in the country, but it is not possible at this moment to accomplish physical distancing for that art form, and for a lot of theatrical performances as well. So though we have recorded our performances around the world, the challenges that have been placed on the dance community, on the theatrical community, have been extraordinary. Not to say that the challenges placed on the musical community have been any less stringent, but musicians, you can film a recital or a quartet concert, or even in the case of Darcy James Argue and Secret Society, there was a way of filming that where they only had to have a couple of people in the studio at any given time.
Mm-hmm. So the music Is most of it newly recorded?
The only exception to the rule is Manual Cinema's Frankenstein. That was filmed in August 2019. Everything else is new. We've learned production skills that are entirely new to this organization, and I think one of the things that you'd wanted to talk about is production versus presentation, and
Right.
there is an element of producing in what we do in general in live performance, but what we've learned to do through Cal Performances on Demand is an entirely different type of.
Does this also mean that in the future you might do more live producing as well, or mostly electronic?
No, I think when we return to live performance, that we're probably not going to go straight into the way things used to be.
Sure. Right.
There are going to be members of our audience who are not comfortable returning to mass gathering for some time, and being able to provide a hybrid experience where you have an electronic delivery of a performance at the same time as a live audience is experiencing it in the hall is going to be very important and for many organizations.
What is the annual budget?
So the budget for the 2021 season that did not happen.
It did not happen, yeah.
Close to 19 million. And we will probably wind up at somewhere around 50% of that. We're reshaping the 21-22 season. It was pretty well planned by the time we announced the 2021 season. And needless to say, it's not just Cal Performances that's changing, it's the artists who are coming to us who are changing. There are artists who are coming from international, well, we have foreign artists coming here, and we're not certain what the travel situation is going to be like, much less the immigration situation. So we're trying to be as nimble as possible and plan for as many different scenarios. And this probably means we're going to be announcing our season later than usual.
You think that the pandemic has made pretty much everybody think about being able to work more flexibly, nimbly, because what we've seen is just completely blew away all previous schedules. Are we learning anything from this as an industry, you think?
I think what we're learning is that what works on the stage is not necessarily what works on the screen, and that's probably self-evident to people who are watching this. But when you're watching a performance within your home, you have a lot more distractions around you than you do when you've essentially given your time over to a live performance and you're sitting in somebody else's hall.
Mm-hmm.
I think the way that we work is going to be changed for decades, that we've learned that a lot more is possible remotely. The fact that you and I are able to have this conversation right now, I mean, we probably would have done this together in person in New York under previous.
Right.
And I don't know exactly how it's going to transform the way arts are produced per se. I think digital will be part of a greater part of our diet moving forward. But one thing that I know for certain is that the absence of live in-person performing arts has only increased the hunger of the audience for that experience, because there is nothing that is like it. You can create something wonderful that is digital, but it's a different experience.
Totally. Have you had to lay off staff?
We have had to lay off staff. We did that in July. In July, we temporarily laid off 18 staff members from a staff of 56.
What percentage of your income is box office?
Why don't I start with the loss for the 1920 season? We had a budget of a deficit of $3.2 million at the end of the season, and 2.2 million of that was related to ticket sales for canceled events.
Out of the 19 million?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
And it was my pleasure to speak with you, and I'm glad to see that you're well and safe. And I'm wishing everyone in New York, especially, health and safety for the winter. It's going to be a hard one.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you so much.